Well, our next guest is Professor Stuart Russell, a British computer scientist who's known for his contributions to AI, but he's also signed that letter and he joins us now. Thank you so much for being on the programme with us. It's really fascinating. Can you just explain why you decided to sign the letter?
So the letter asks for a pause in the development and release of systems that are more powerful than GPT-4, which is the successor of ChatGPT that you just mentioned. And the reason I signed it, I should say I didn't write it, but I signed it because I think it needs to be said that we don't understand how these systems work. We don't know what they're capable of, and that means that we can't control them. We can't get them to behave themselves. And they're already causing harm. For example, there was a gentleman in Belgium who committed suicide with the advice and guidance of a chatbot. And people are concerned about disinformation, about racial and gender bias in the outputs of these systems. And we need time to develop the regulations that will make sure that the systems are beneficial to people rather than harmful.
It's extraordinary to listen to you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's extraordinary to listen to you. It kind of feels like the sort of thing that I read about in science fiction novels, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. What kind of examples can you give? We sort of showed some of them before, like deepfake songs and images, but what kind of examples are you most concerned about?
So there's a distinction between the systems that already exist. And I think one of the biggest concerns is disinformation and deepfakes. We've had disinformation for a long time, right? I mean, propaganda and all that. But the difference here is I can now ask GPT-4 to read all about Sophie Ridge's social media presence, everything Sophie Ridge has ever said or written, all about Sophie Ridge's friends, and then just begin a campaign gradually by adjusting your news feed, maybe occasionally sending some fake news along into your news feed so that you're a little bit less supportive of Ukraine. And you start pushing harder on politicians who say we should support Ukraine in the war against Russia and so on. That will be very easy to do. And the really scary thing is that we could do that to 1 million different people before lunch. And so you can have a huge impact with these systems for the worse by manipulating people in ways that they don't even realize is happening.
That's genuinely really scary, if I'm being honest, to listen to that. Is that kind of thing happening now?
I would say quite likely, yes. We know in China and Russia and North Korea, large teams of people who pump out disinformation, and we've just given them a power tool. The concern of the letter is really about the next generation of the system. Right now, the systems, I think, have some limitations in their ability to construct complicated plans. For example, if you wanted a plan for one company to take over another, that's a really complicated thing, and I don't think these systems can generate those kinds of plans successfully. But quite possible that the next generation or the generation after could start to do that, and then you could see corporations being run by AI systems. You could see military campaigns being organized by AI systems. And in the long run, the concern is quite a simple one, right? If you're building systems that are more powerful than human beings, how do human beings keep power over those systems forever? That's the real concern behind the open letter.
Wow, really, really big questions. You're talking about a pause so regulation can catch up, but you're also saying that, look, countries like China and Russia can use this. So in some ways, what's the point of regulation when people are just going to ignore it?
So interestingly, China, just after the open letter came out, issued regulations that are much stricter than anything that the European Union is contemplating, or the United States for that matter. And some people view the Chinese regulations as a de facto ban on these kinds of systems. We call them the large language models like chatgpt, because the Chinese rules, for example, say that they may not output false information. And one of the things we know about these large language models is that they lie through their teeth all the time without even realizing it. They make stuff up, and there's no way to control them, right? We don't understand how they work inside. We don't understand what makes them say things that aren't true. And the only way we have to control them is basically to say, bad dog, right? Bad dog, and hope that by keeping on saying bad dog, they'll learn to behave themselves better. That's not a very reassuring method of control for systems that can affect the lives of millions of people.
I guess my concern, though, is I accept that it's really interesting to hear about the regulations in China, but there will always be bad actors, whether that's nations or whether that's individuals. So no matter how much regulation you put in place, can it ever really be safe?
I think that's a really good point. And I've been trying to convince governments of the need to start planning ahead for the time when we need to actually change the way our whole digital ecosystem, if you like, the way it works. Because right now, your computer pretty much runs anything that people send to it, unless it knows already that it's malware, right? That it knows that it's a virus because it has a signature that it can recognize. We actually need to flip that around so that your computer won't run anything unless it knows that it's safe. And if we have it working that way, then we can say, okay, AI systems that don't come with a guarantee of safety, the system simply won't run them. That's a big change, but I think it's something that's going to be absolutely necessary in the long run.
What does it mean for jobs as well? We were joking about the newsreader. Well, I mean, I was kind of joking about the newsreader. But there are big implications for people's jobs.
Yeah, so some studies suggest that these large language models like ChatGPT could affect maybe 300 million jobs in the developed economies. And I think they're also going to have a big impact on all the outsourcing jobs that are helping to create a middle class in lots of other countries around the world. Because outsourcing really means breaking jobs down into small, easily digestible pieces that people who are not super expert can tackle and then send back the results. And it's exactly those kinds of tasks that systems like ChatGPT can do very well. They're actually extremely good at writing computer programs, for example. So many programming jobs could be lost. And there's a kind of a mantra going around that you'll hear from a lot of the tech industry, which says, well, we're not going to replace humans, we're going to augment humans. We're going to make them more productive. We're going to give them more time to work on the things that matter. And I think this is just a mythical argument because let's say you're a radiologist, right? And maybe we can get AI systems that take care of 80% of the cases that are just routine. But people are not going to break their legs in more interesting and complicated ways just to keep radiologists in work, right? The obvious consequence is that if radiologists are much more productive, we will need fewer radiologists. And this is going to happen across the board. Societies need time to adjust. And I'm a little bit worried that governments are not really thinking ahead about how those adjustments are going to need to work in our education system, in the structure of our economy. Many governments are thinking, oh, we'll just retrain people to be data scientists and robot engineers. But we only need a few million of those, and there's a few billion people whose livelihoods could be threatened by systems coming in the future.
Wow, I mean, you say you're a little bit worried. I'm more than a little bit worried after talking to you, I will be honest. It's been fascinating to talk. I could talk to you all morning. And I'm also been looking at the time where you are as well, 39 minutes past 1 in the morning in California. Yep. So our thanks for taking the time out to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Very nice talking to you, Sophie.